Right, let's get cracking with our first of our political guests and speakers. Please welcome up to the top of the auditorium, Damian Collins, OBE MP. Thank you very much, Damian. Take it away.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be with you in Edinburgh today for this LEAD conference. Whenever I come to Scotland and to Edinburgh sometimes for the television festival, it's always a great reminder that Scotland is home to so many fantastic hubs and clusters of creative talent here in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, in Dundee, bringing together TV production, advertising, video games industry as well. And it's a good reminder too that advertising is integral to all of those industries. The money that advertising makes helps fund production work and creates employment for people that work across those sectors. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you. Well, I was thinking of what I might say in my remarks this morning, and some of you may know I started my career in the advertising industry at M&C Saatchi. So I was thinking of a book actually written by an ex-Saatchi and Saatchi creative director, Paul Arden, called It's Not How Good You Are, It's How Good You Want to Be. And I'd read that book some years ago, I think when I was at Saatchi's, and I got a copy of it in my office in the House of Commons. So I thought there's something in there I wanted to look up. When I was leaving Parliament, I remember that I'd forgotten to collect the book from my office, but then got on the tube at Westminster Station and to my great surprise, saw a lady in the tube reading the exact book. And that reminded me, it was a great demonstration of what it was that I was looking for. And that was one of the thoughts he puts in that book, which is, he says, give away everything you know and more will come back to you, which is a sort of counterintuitive idea. But his thought was that if you give away everything you know, you've got to go and seek out new information and new ideas. You can't just rely on that store of knowledge and information that you have. That if you give away everything you know, you get regarded as being an ideas person and people come to you with ideas and they share their ideas with you. But the third reason was that you should give away what you know because your ideas don't really belong to you. That flash of inspiration that you have in the shower or on the bus, that's not really you. That's something you've picked up from somewhere else, subconsciously, and then it manifests itself and presents itself to you at that moment. And I think that is very true, but I think it's also quite a profound thought for the modern information ecology we live in at the moment. We've never been exposed to more information, to more ideas. The virality of ideas that we talk about now, how information spreads through society, not because it's been chosen or selected by a newspaper editor or a program maker, but because it has sparked an imagination online. And that personalization of information, designing information around the individual, tailoring and sharing information around the individual has become common to the way ideas are shared today and the way our media system works. It does mean in the advertising industry that if you are an advertising person, you can now answer Lord Leverhume's famous challenge about his advertising, that he knew half of it worked, but he didn't know which half. Now you can see exactly what's working. You can see exactly how messages are tailored. But this also throws up some new challenges and problems as well. We could be more targeted and more personalized, but we've also created an environment where disinformation can spread more easily, where conspiracies can spread more easily, where people can be more easily conned and defrauded. And then we have to think of how we respond to that challenge. This more personalized and fractured media market also creates challenges for organizations that have relied on ad revenue in the past, because it's not that the advertisers aren't spending anymore, it's just they're spending in different ways and they're targeting in different ways. So I think that throws up sort of 4 challenges, which I think in Westminster we have to try and grapple with. And I just wanted to say something briefly on that now. Firstly is the challenge for public broadcasting in an environment where ad funding for public broadcasting can't be relied upon to the extent that it was. I think the debate around the future Channel 4 is somehow intrinsically linked to that, is if advertising alone won't fund public service broadcasting to the extent it has in the past, because more of that money is being spent elsewhere, how do we continue to support public broadcasting and the vital role it plays both in commissioning work from the production sector, but also in telling the unique stories of our nations and regions to an extent that a global streaming service may not? And what is it that we value about public broadcasting that we want to preserve? And how will we do that in a future where television will probably be funded in a slightly different way and the ad market will work in a slightly different way? The second challenge, I think, is around ad tech itself. And that is, how can we make sure that ad tech isn't used to fund bad stuff? The Centre for Countering Digital Hate, and I declare an interest as being a unpaid member of their advisory board, has done some fantastic work, not to try and deliberately trip up companies like Google, but to point out some of the issues that their ad tech can fund disinformation campaigns, anti-vaccine campaigns. On anti-vax, they think that their analysis suggested that the value to Google of the anti-vax movement was about $1 billion globally because of ad placement and funding against those platforms, those websites, where it shouldn't be. So I think in ad tech, we have to be vigilant to make sure that systems that have been designed to make the industry work more effectively and to create value for businesses aren't also being used to fund things that no brand would ever want their name to be associated with. But in this case, in the case of some of these anti-vax campaigns, brands like Canon and Patagonia found their ads being placed on sites where they would never have chosen to have their ads placed there. So I think that creates a new challenge for us too. I think the challenge of disinformation and combating fraud, and this was something the Online Safety Bill has sought to address as well. The bill is very nearly enacted in Parliament. It went through its hopefully final stage this week and will become law before the end of October. But that again, to place the idea of responsibility on platforms. We've had a system of self-regulating the advertising industry in the UK, which is based really on sort of common understanding, media owners and advertisers and brands accepting common codes, wanting to be governed by them, and it being easy to control who could place an advert. When I was working at Saatchi's, you didn't want to make a TV commercial that will get banned by the Advertising Standards Authority because that would be a very expensive mistake to make, and the chances are your client wouldn't thank you for that. But when we're dealing with brands and advertisers you can't see, going through platforms that are difficult to control, who takes effective action when, say, a known fraudster is placing adverts on Facebook or Google? And that's why it's important we've created those liabilities for intermediaries, the platform owners themselves to say, the offence isn't just created by the person running the ad, it's created by you as well if you accept and take money for that advert without challenging it or removing it if you know that it's clearly illegal and promoting illegal products. So that intermediary liability, I think, is absolutely crucial as well. And I would say finally, with regards to the government's own review of the advertising market, the online advertising review that's going through at the moment, I think we need to make sure that we can support self-regulation in the advertising industry by making sure that regulators can intervene if platforms aren't doing what they've been asked to do. That if the ASA has made a complaint about an ad and wants it to be taken down, other platforms don't run it. I think it also means considering what we mean when we say we want effective action against illegal ads, which is in the government's current consultation. Because everyone who works in advertising knows that illegality in and of itself is not necessarily the way the advertising codes have been prepared. It's not necessarily illegal to suggest that drinking a particular brand of beer will make you successful, but it is against the advertising code. And so we want to make sure there's consistency, that the rules that govern what you can advertise on television also govern what you can place on the internet as well, and that these things are run fairly. The other big area which I won't talk about this morning because I could spend 10 minutes on that alone, is the Digital Markets Competition Review as well, and how that works in the ad market is really important to make sure there is value for brands and advertisers in placing ads in a system that is quite opaque and is controlled by only two people. But finally, and back to Paul Arden, and Stephen Woodford I know is aware of this story. I was thinking about an old colleague of mine, Graham Fink, as creative director. Some of you may have come across. I worked with him at Saatchi's, and he very famously, when he was at WCRS, left the agency after a creative dispute with one of the management team there, where it culminated in him picking up a yucca plant and throwing it across the room. I have to say, I believe that neither plant nor any human in the room were adversely affected by this incident, but Graham nevertheless left that meeting feeling pretty confident his days at that advertising agency had come to an end. And when he was reflecting on what he'd done, the first call he had was from Paul Arden, who just said, "We've heard about the yucca plant." He said, "Would you like to come and work for us at Saatchi?" And I mention that because I think whilst I'm not condoning what Graham did or saying that has any place in a modern work environment, what I would say, it's about saying, are the values that you hold and the standards that you set, are they set by you or are they set by other people on your behalf? And I think the challenge we face now for the advertising industry is to say, what we want are the standards that we work to, the standards that have stood the industry in good stead for many years, are the standards that it's held to in the future. That those standards aren't imposed by outside bodies that are difficult to regulate, that those values remain consistent with the way we work today, and the way we support public broadcasting, in the way we make sure there are fair standards to keep people safe in what runs and to create fair competition for people who engage in the market. And I think that is the challenge that we will have in the next few years. Thank you.